for turning up virtually. So as Alessandro said, I'm Tim Park. I am currently Senior Data Scientist and the Team Lead for Data Science within AO. And what I'm going to talk to you about today is a kind of general area of personalization that we're moving into, and specifically a project around giving personalized incentives. So before I get into that, a bit of context for those of you who might not have heard of AO.com before. So we're an online retailer. We're most known for kind of large kitchen appliances, but we do cover a wide range of electrical goods, small appliances, gaming, TVs, gardening, beauty, all of these different things. We're currently active in both the UK and Germany. And in numbers, we're doing about 72,000 deliveries every week. One of the nice things from my perspective about working for AO is it's not just the website, it's not just the commercial side. AO also runs most of its own logistics. So we have our own warehouses, our own outbases. Also, most of the deliveries are done by AO staff as well. We also run a recycling facility as well. So when you order from us, you can pay a little bit extra. We'll take your old appliance away, and that might end up in our recycling facility in Telford. And they process around 700,000 fridges a year through one very large and impressive machine. Currently, we believe we have around 8 million customers. I'll touch on that later in my talk. And one of the kind of main parts of AO's company culture is something that we really push is how we treat our customers. So whenever our CEO speaks to us as a company, he will inevitably use the phrase, treat every customer like your nan and make decisions at work that would make your mum proud. And that's something that really does run through our company as a culture. So now I'm going to talk to you about one project which kind of feeds into that. So when we have these millions of customers, they're all very different. So we don't just have one template of this is an AO customer. Given that, we want to try and tailor the experience that people have to that customer. So what does that customer want? What do they like to see on a website? What are they particularly looking for? And part of that is what we call this personalized incentives. So the kind of overall aim of this project is when somebody is shopping on our website, we want the ability to provide them with a discount, but not just any discount. This should be one which is tailored to them. So what does that customer want? What are they looking for? But also, how much of a discount do they need? How much of an incentive do they need to end up buying something from us, which is, again, the ultimate commercial goal in this. So how does this look? Currently, if you were to go on our website, you might see something that looks a little bit like this. Before anybody starts to be sneaky, this code has expired, but you may see one very similar to it. So this one is giving you £25 off appliances $299 and above. Now, the idea of personalized incentives is not everybody sees this. So we could run this as a kind of blanket banner, so everybody has the same, but the way we make it personal is some people will see this discount, some people will see no discount, some people will see a slightly different one, maybe for a different category of product, maybe for a different level of money off. So why are we doing this? Well, as I said, we could run this as just a blanket banner, so everybody gets the same. And we do those kinds of things. We do have offers like that. You'll probably see quite a few of them popping up as we get towards Black Friday. And the reason any company in general does an offer is it persuades people who were not going to buy to buy. So it changes their mind. And so that leads to extra sales, leads to extra revenue, hopefully leads to more money. But there's a bad part of it as well. There will be some people who arrive on our website and they've already made the decision to purchase, or even without a discount, they would go on that journey by themselves and end up buying something. So by offering this discount, all we're doing is taking somebody who turned up card in hand to give us some money, and we've given them another £20 off. Kind of back of the envelope calculations to show what we're dealing with. If you took that 72,000 deliveries a week, if in extreme case we gave everybody an extra £20 off, that's nearly £75 million of lost profit every year. So that shows you that there is, really a big goal here, a big prize that we can go after if we were to, in a smart way, avoid giving discounts to people who don't need it. Now, I've kind of put this in slightly more technical language. If we think about how do we make money from a discount campaign? So I've kind of broken it down to this left-hand side, which is the positive. So it's opportunity. These are people who weren't going to buy something. Maybe with a discount, they're still not going to buy something. We didn't lose anything. That's all right. But there's a chance that they will be influenced. They'll change their mind. How many people are being influenced is what we call the influence rate. And then they'll purchase something with certain average order value. If you think about this already in kind of machine learning terms, that's what we call true negatives. So if we're trying to predict, is this person going to buy? If we get it correctly that they're not, that's what gives us a benefit. Bad parts we call waste. So these are those people who turned up with their money and we said, no, don't give us that much, give us £20 less and you can still have it. So this is what we want to try and avoid. And this would be what we call a false negative. So we didn't think they were going to buy, but we got it wrong. So then this leads us to what we call propensity modeling. So in very general terms, what we're doing here is we want to try and predict the probability that somebody is going to buy something. This could be, a very kind of generic end of things. Is this visitor going to buy anything from our website? Could be a TV, could be a washing machine, could be a toaster. We could also get it a bit more specific. So we could say, well, is this visitor to our website specifically going to buy a large kitchen appliance? Or are they specifically going to buy a TV? And so it's a kind of a very general framework for lots of different possibilities we could do here. And what it's giving us is two things. So firstly, it's distinguishing people who are already intending to buy, we can leave them to it. People who are not intending to buy, we need to try and incentivize them. But it also starts to tell us the what. Is this person interested in TVs? Okay, they are, but they're not intending to buy, so we'll give them a discount for a TV. And by making it more kind of specific, more designed around them, it should give the customer a better experience. It should also have more chance of success because you're not just giving them a very generic discount. You're saying, yeah, this thing that you want to buy, we can make it a bit cheaper for you, specifically for you. So how do we do this? Kind of getting into a little bit of the practicalities. So basically, we collect data on people. So when somebody visits our website, like all websites are supposed to do, we ask for consent for cookies. If they consent to that, then we can start collecting information about them. So we get lots of different things, including how did they get to the site? Was it a direct, typed in AO.com in their browser? Was it from a paid ad? What pages did they visit? How long did they spend on each page? Did they use things like the search function? Did they apply filters to a list page? Also, if we have seen that visitor before, what did they do in their previous session? So how long were they on the site before? What pages did they visit before now? Crucially, we also get the list of labels, so we know, did they buy something? If they did, what did they buy? You can even get a little bit more nuanced as well. Sometimes people put things in their basket but don't actually go through to purchase. But that's typically not what we do for this one. So using all of that data, we can train machine learning models, train classifier models to give this propensity score. Again, either we can look at it in terms of kind of generic propensities or propensities for certain categories. And then when we have got these trained models, we can apply it in the live environment. So as new visitors arrive on our site, as soon as they arrive, it triggers a model which outputs a propensity score, then goes into what other decision logic we have at the time to say, do we want to show this person a discount? And if so, what? And that kind of decision logic is generally based on what our commercial goals are at the time. So are we looking to drive a lot of new sales? Okay, let's target a wider range of people. Are we looking to drive sales specifically for certain categories over other ones? Okay, we'll give more incentives in that category than the other one. So when we build these models, what do they end up using? So what comes out as a kind of important factor for us when we're doing this propensity modeling? That does, of course, depend on exactly what the goal is. It does also depend to some extent. We retrain these models periodically, so it does depend a bit on time of year, but there are certain factors which we at least find come out as quite important. And at the risk of making kind of unbased or correlation and causation, not causation claims, we do have some sort of intuition of why this is happening. So for example, a device. So we know if the person is using a laptop or a tablet or a mobile phone. And this does kind of show a bit about what the person's intent is. So if you imagine a laptop, it's a large screen, you can see the information a bit clearer. You can look at more information at once. You can compare two products a bit easier just because you have more space on your screen. That is often something that people do for that kind of detailed look, and kind of when they've really have a strong intention they are going to buy something, they're just figuring out exactly what and then paying for it. Mobiles, you've got 10 minutes on the train or your meeting got cancelled, so you've got a little bit of a break, you get your phone out and browse TVs. That's kind of different sort of experience and intent. Similar theme, how long did they spend in their last visit? We do find people will do a lot of research, so we'll spend a long time on the site really getting to know different products that we have, deciding what's right for them. They won't buy right away. They'll go away, they'll think about it, they'll discuss with their partner, because a lot of the things we sell are relatively expensive and they're not things you buy often. How often do you buy a new fridge? So people do take a bit more time about deciding, but then once they've decided, they'll come back and they'll quickly buy it. And then similar ideas with things like the route to site. How did they get there? That one does come out as quite important. It kind of reveals a little bit of the intent. I've got an example here. We pay for advertising on Google, as do a lot of other similar companies. So if somebody is just browsing, they might not go directly to AO.com. They'll just do a Google search, and then they'll see one of our ads, or they'll see one of our ads on Twitter or Facebook or somewhere like that, and they'll just kind of click out of interest. Whereas somebody who purposely types in AO.com probably has a higher level of intent, and also they're likely to know our brand a lot more because they have sought us out, and it kind of shows they have more trust in our brand as somebody they would like to buy from. And then similarly, time of day of the week, that can be quite revealing. Again, if you're looking during work hours, there's a higher chance that you're just kind of browsing because you have a little bit of time spare. It tends to be more kind of in the evenings when you kind of sat down after work. That's when you actually get down to buying the thing. Okay. So the last bit I'll talk about in terms of the propensity modeling and this kind of personalized incentives that we're doing is a little bit about sort of a future look of where we're at, and it's a question of when. So the kind of conventional wisdom of any kind of modeling is the more data you have, the better predictions you're going to make. And when it comes to this kind of project, you can imagine that if you observe somebody on our website for a longer period of time, you're going to know more about them. You know what things they're looking for. Are they comparing products? Are they switching between lots of different things, or are they just focusing on one or two particular items? So that's going to give you a lot of information. It's going to make you make better decisions. It's going to give you more accurate models. However, very few people spend that long on our website. Most people, they'll arrive, they'll maybe look in one category or look at one product, and they'll leave. If they've come through a paid advert, it might even be worse. They'll just look at the specific product or product category that the advert was about, and then they'll leave. The people who stick around are the people who are most likely to have already decided to buy from us. So they're not the people we're even interested in. So what we are generally doing with these is we have to make a decision very quickly, within the first couple of clicks that somebody arrives on our site, just because that's kind of the window that we have to make a decision on somebody. However, this is something we're thinking about a lot of, is this really optimal? Are there times where it does make sense that we hold off a little bit? We think we know about somebody, but we want to wait a little bit longer because that is the optimal thing to do. Incidentally, this also informs about the previous slide about what's important to the model. I don't know if anybody had any preconceptions or have experience from similar sorts of projects, but generally the things that come out in the model as important are things we know about people right away, because that's all it can use, because we can't wait long enough to really find out about somebody. So with that, I'm going to take the second half of the talk in a slightly different direction and pose this sort of question. So if you've been listening closely, which I hope you have, you might have heard me say a few different words like visitor, customer, person. So in normal speech, you can almost use these things interchangeably. If I'm not paying attention, I often do. But they are very different things. And what we're really trying to do in this project is called personalized incentives. We want to know about a person. So what is a person? Well, here's a picture of a person. I've decided her name is Jane Smith. It probably isn't, but I didn't know what her name was. So if you imagine that Jane has bought from AO several times. In our kind of raw databases, we don't actually have a concept of Jane as a person. What we have is visitor IDs when she was looking on our site. We have the email addresses that she put on her order, delivery addresses where we sent the things, her name, her phone number. We might assume that we can just use any of these things or some of these things as a person, and we do that, in a lot of cases because it's kind of the easiest, the quickest thing to do, and in a lot of cases it's close enough, but it's not really the same. The reason I say that is, if you look in our databases, we might see orders for Jane Smith, for J Smith, because we don't force you to write your full name, Jan Smith, because she was in a bit of a rush and misspelled her name. That does happen, probably more than you might think. Yeah, when we do insist on an email address, that email address, we don't check that it's valid, but generally we do find it is a valid email address, but people have multiple ones. So maybe she used her work email, her work email address. She was one of these people who decided that her and her partner should have a couple's email address and use that one time. Yeah, equally, we might, when she's looking on our site, we don't necessarily just have one visitor ID for her. If she's used different devices, they could show up differently. Most people have multiple devices now. If you clear your browser cookies, if you use incognito mode on your browser, we can see these things as different visits. So, as I said, we really want to be able to do machine learning, do model building on a person, but we don't have that in our database. So how do we link all of these different bits of information to know that they're the same person? So this is an area called entity matching. The idea here is to create what's known as a single customer view. So one view of Jane as a person. Kind of goes through these different stages. So you start out with your raw data. So this is all the separate orders, probably all with potentially slightly different names, addresses, different email addresses. Crucially, that has to go, as happens with a lot of data science projects, not all, we have to go through a lot of data cleansing. Because most of the information we get from people filling out free text boxes on our site, there's no guarantee that the addresses will always be in the same format. You could have abbreviated street as ST or something like that. There's also things like your email address. You might put some capital letters in sometimes, and maybe all lowercase some other times. Things like that. We also often have folders from different sources. So at different times in Aeo's history, we've sold things through Boots, we've sold things through eBay. So when we get those details of those orders, the formatting can be quite different. So we need to make sure that it's standardized as much as possible. Then we kind of do the easy stuff, which is where are there cases with exact matches? So where have we got orders with exactly the same name, exactly the same delivery address, and exactly the same email address? Okay, unless something very strange has happened, which is always possible, they must be the same person. That's the easy stuff. The harder stuff is then matching those things where the information is not quite the same. So maybe it is the same person, but they've moved house, they've got married and changed their name, they've used different phone numbers, things like that. So here what we do is we try and build up evidence. So if we have two transactions, for example, we would have a set of rules, and whether they kind of pass or fail that rule, we assign some points to whether those two orders are from the same person. So a rule might be something like, you know, the first and last name are the same and the delivery address is the same. Other information can be different. So we might say that, yeah, that's quite strong evidence that it is the same person. So we'll give that quite a high score. You might have other things where, say, it's, you know, say the same phone number, but different names, for example, or maybe the same email address. You know, that might be, but it's probably less kind of clear cut. You know, it could be that it's, say, a husband and wife who share an email address and a phone number, something like that. So it kind of assesses all of this different evidence to try and find, you know, what's the most likely kind of arrangement of these things, of who is the same person and who is not. The beauty of that kind of thing is, as you get new information, you can update things. So, for example, you know, if we had an order from Jane Smith and an order from Jay Smith, we might decide that, yeah, they're the same person. So we'll put those together. At a later date, we get an order from John Smith at the same address. You know, that might then change our mind, and we say, actually, no, now the best information that we have says that Jay Smith is actually John Smith because they had the same phone number, for example. So what can we do with this? Well, this opens up quite a lot of other possibilities across the business. But essentially what we're doing is we're stitching together all of these different orders, maybe also interactions such as when people have called, when people have emailed, when people visited the site. So we have a much more complete history of, you know, what interactions have we had with this person, as we can say person now. We can also kind of query this. So if we say, well, I've got a new bit of information, I've got an email from this email address. Have we interacted with this email address before? Yes, we have, and it's connected to this person who is connected to these other email addresses, who is connected to these orders. So for example, if somebody phones our contact center, the agent doesn't have to ask a lot of questions to find out about the person, their order history. They can already know it. So that, again, can feed into that sort of personalization and that kind of treating our customers right, because we know them, and so we know a bit more about, you know, what they're going to need. We can also, linking it back to the first half of my talk, when we have people visiting our website, you know, we can start to build up more history about them. We can know more about them immediately. So for example, you know, in theory at least, we might be able to find out, are they plugged in to a Gmail account when they're browsing? Okay, so we know that email address. We've seen that email address before. So here's more information about that, who is most likely the person behind that. This again should lead to better models. And also with that constraint of we have to make the decision quickly, it means we don't have to wait for the person to give us more information. You know, we have already collected that and we can use that. So where I'm going to end up here, some words of warning on this. So while all of this is, you know, is really fantastic and exciting for us, you know, because this is a data science talk, it probably goes without saying that methods like this are not perfect. You know, you can imagine any number of scenarios where it's pretty much indistinguishable to know whether two sales are to the same person or not. What makes that even worse is it can be very difficult to validate, how accurate we are, because we don't have easy access to the truth. We don't know for certain that these two transactions were from the same person unless we actively go out and ask them, which doesn't happen very often. Again, these things are normal problems for a data science project. Where we also have to flag up with this is that level of accuracy, level of validity, can be variable, say in different regions of the country. Different regions of the country may have different street address structures or kind of inconsistencies in how people report that. So it can make it harder for this matching to work. It can also be harder for certain minority groups because people from different sort of ethnic backgrounds, their names may cause more problems for this algorithm. For example, I know somebody who is Polish heritage. For her, her last name is different to the male members of her family because it's gendered. And when she's working in the dealing with the British system, sometimes she gives her correct name. Sometimes she gives the male version of her name because it can cause problems if her last name is different from her father's. So you can have all of these potential issues. And then this raises some kind of concerns that we have to deal with, not as a data science team, but as a company. How do we mitigate this? So how do we make sure that we're not unfairly treating some customers over some others? And crucially, how do we show evidence of this, that we have made these efforts? What I'll end with here is that this, as with a lot of projects, not all projects, is a good reason why it's good to have that sort of strong engagement with people like your legal team, people like the data protection teams, so that we can first and foremost say, is what we're doing legal? Is this kind of new use of data consistent with the cookie consent message that we give out on site? And then a kind of a stronger test, maybe even a more important test, is it ethical? Would a customer be happy knowing that this is how we use our data? So I'm going to stop there, but kind of to summarize, where we've gone in this talk is I kind of showed you one area of personalization that we are pursuing as a company. One of these areas where we try and differentiate our customers and try and give them that more kind of tailored experience. That then led us to needing more from our data, so needing concepts from our data that just didn't exist already. So that kind of spurs another project, which has kind of even wider implications or wider benefits. And then the other thing that we then leads us to do is have got kind of open conversations in-house as well about what are the implications of what we're doing. So is it right that we're doing this? So with that, I'm going to say thank you very much for listening, and I'd be very open to some questions in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. Fantastic presentation. So we have a few questions coming in. So to begin with, how did you measure the accuracy of the single customer view?
Yeah, so I mentioned it's hard. And it's hard because there isn't that kind of easily accessible label data, which for any kind of supervised machine learning method always is going to cause you problems. So what we do is we attack it in a couple of ways. We firstly try and find data where we do know the truth. The easiest source we have for that is we ask some of our colleagues. Like for a lot of companies, we get a staff discount. So AOers tend to buy more from AO than elsewhere. So we can generally find a few people who have had multiple purchases, who can kind of point us to, say, family members who've had purchases. and we can look and see, you know, how does that look in the data? Can our algorithm pick those up? So incidentally, why I say that people do misspell their name, because one of my colleagues misspelled his name on one of the orders. That isn't enough, because, you know, using only AO is quite a biased sample of the entire population. So what we'll do as well is you need kind of local knowledge, or kind of specific knowledge about you know, who you're, about different populations, different kind of demographics in the country. So you kind of create a sort of artificial label data set. So if you know that, for example, two people living together who are married are likely to have the same last name, you know, let's create some scenarios with that and see if our algorithm does pick it up. Okay, as I said, we know that for certain people of certain heritage, they might have kind of gendered last names. Can our algorithm pick that up? Certain parts of the country, let's throw in a few addresses from parts of the country which use slightly different address systems. So that's, it's not perfect. There's a lot of issues with it, but you know, that's the kind of thing that we do.
That's great. Oh, thank you for that. So Charlie and Joan ask a similar question along the same lines, basically around the performance of the propensity modeling initiative. How do you measure its success? How do you distinguish what's been driven by the model and what's been driven by another random effect?
Yeah, great question. So I look at the Q&As. I can't give you exact percentages. I hope you understand. But yeah, how do we do this? So basically, the simple answer is with a control group. So you know, what we'll do is we'll run a campaign and say we're going to offer £20 off, and we're going to target people with these kind of propensity scores, or people who visited these kind of parts of our site. So we'll set up that campaign, and we'll identify a test group and a control group, and then we can do that direct comparison to say, you know, how many sales did we get in each. Where this gets tricky, which I'm sure if anybody else is working for an e-commerce company, or the other kind of companies, you might come into this, is we still have issues with you know, confounding factors of other things that are happening on site. You know, are other teams running promotions, or have they changed up the way things are advertised? You know, have we sent out an email pushing for certain products, or even worse, have our competitors started doing these things, because that we have even less view on. But yeah, that's kind of roughly how we would start to measure it. And the kind of metrics we use, you know, as with most things, it starts off as money. So, you know, did we make more money out of the test group than the control group? We'll also then look at, you know, kind of technical metrics on the model. You know, what was the precision recall of our model? Is it what we expect it to be?
Cool, thank you for that. Christine asks, well, great talk. Is it possible worth attempting entity matching on customers who haven't placed an order yet, so known where for which we might not have any name or address?
Yeah, I think it's always worth it, because in particular, those are the customers I wouldn't say we the most want to go after, but you know, people who are not buying from us are a group of people who are of a lot of interest to us, because we want them to start buying from us. You know, we are interested in our current customers. We'd like them to buy more often or more expensive things. But yeah, it's clearly a group of people who we're very interested in. And you know, there are things that you can do. So you can start to pull together, say, visits to our site, you know, whether they have, you know, spoken to a representative either with our live chat or our contact center. So it is possible. You're not going to get the same level of information, because if you haven't placed an order, we're not going to know your exact address, or email address, or maybe not very much about you. But yeah, it's worth it, because yeah, any more data you can get is going to be useful.
Cool. Thank you for that. Then Diego asks about specifics of what model you guys are using, and what type of model performs better on this task.
Yeah, so I can't go into too much specifics, but typically what we're using are fairly kind of simple, understandable, lightweight models. So we start with things like a decision tree, because it's very understandable. Particularly at the start, it's always good to start with the very simple models, particularly when we're kind of with the commercial teams that we work with, trying to bring them on a journey. They want to know, well, what's driving it, what causes this. But yeah, we also explore kind of more complex models. We definitely don't go for the kind of more kind of complex end, say neural networks getting into deep learning, just because the level of information we try and use just isn't enough to feed those kind of models, even though we do have hundreds of thousands of site visitors that we could be learning off.
That makes sense. I think a lot of people find themselves in that sort of scenario. And then Kayadi, by the way, guys, apologies if I mispronounce any of your names. I'll do my best. So yeah, it's just a great talk. Thank you very much. May I know what might cause a noise and bias in the models that you have used?
Good question. So I guess one of the things that we are always kind of worried about in terms of bias, it's probably true of anything which is kind of time-based, is we're always training a model on, say, now, or probably more likely, a couple of weeks, months in the past, and we're trying to make predictions about what's going to happen in the future. As a retail company, a lot of what happens on site and purchases is extremely seasonal. For example, it's a perfect time to be doing this talk. Everything that happens in November is atypical for us because it's Black Friday. We get people on the site who have never considered going on the site before. We're selling a lot more of certain categories because we're pushing big promotions on them. So that's one thing that we always have to be very careful of, knowing, is what's happening in the training period really going to be atypical? Obviously we go through the kind of standard things of having a withheld validation set, which is sometime after the training set, but it's still, if you want to be using that same model for even several weeks, you have to be aware of, is something changing? Are there any big changes in the website and the kind of traffic that we get? So yeah, that's one of those things which we take steps to mitigate, but yeah, there's always stuff which you can't control.
Fair enough. Next one is from Justin. How did you decide the propensity threshold for customers that are opportunity versus waste, i.e. would to serve the sales banner to?
So this is a good question. It's something which is also quite kind of active in our minds, because there's a lot of optimization that you could do on there. What we kind of start off by doing somewhere in the middle. It gives the commercial teams a little bit of intuition to say, a score in the middle. This is kind of an average chance of somebody buying. People who are higher than that are kind of higher than the average person, lower than that are lower than the average person. They kind of use that as a starting point, and then say, well, what are our goals? Because that's going to inform it a lot. It's not always about driving the most profit. Sometimes the teams are willing to sacrifice some profit for revenue. So we're happy to lose money as long as we're selling more stuff. And there's lots of different commercial factors that go into that decision. So that kind of allows them to make a call on, do you push it higher or lower? Then that kind of middle ground. We then, as this goes a long time, we do a lot of analytics around, what happened. We can look at, compare test and control group at different propensities to see, could we have made a better decision for that campaign? We also look at, the likely performance of the model. So we try and put it into a kind of more quantified way of, at this threshold, how is your balance between what you're risking in waste versus what new opportunities you're going to get?
Yeah, that makes sense. Next one is from Michael. Does the propensity model condition on whether a user saw a promotion for its training data? I imagine a big delta in the respective scores strongly indicates the promotion is highly likely to work.
Yeah, that is what I'll say to that is, at the moment, we tend to trade models on people who have not seen promotions, because that's kind of the cleanest way to do it, is to say, what would happen to this person if we don't do anything? And so that's another way, kind of a similar answer to how do we measure the success? We need that kind of clean control group. So, if anybody has a desire to go and test this out on our site, there will be a chance that whatever you do, you won't see anything because you've been put in a control group and you won't know that necessarily. So that's, again, how we, I think it's the, as I was in the question, that will add a significant bias, that if you train on people who have been shown a promotion, if everything's going well, they should be buying at a much higher rate than people who haven't. So you're kind of, that leads you to show fewer promotions, which isn't what you want.
Interesting. Next one is from Richard. Did you consider working out which household requests come from, rather than which person? Typically, a purchase like a washing machine will be a household decision.
Yeah, that's not something I covered, but yeah, it is a kind of similar thing with the entity matching, that you can have a few different concepts. So you said there's a concept of a person, but you can also have the concept of a household, and that is, that's quite crucial, because it's pretty rare that one household will have more than one washing machine. For the type of products we sell, a lot are you only have one in your house. We do sell a fair number of TVs, which you may have multiple ones, but we look at that, and yeah, it also can definitely be the case that for a married couple or partners living together, one will browse, will decide what they want, the other one will actually be the one to purchase it. So yeah, it does add that extra bit of complication, but that extra kind of source of being able to stitch data together. It's, again, as I said, November is weird in every way, but that does happen a lot as well, that you'll get people who, one person browses and then says to somebody else, I want this for Christmas, please buy it from me.
Definitely. And last question that we have is from David. So we'll be interested to hear more about ethical aspects of personalized pricing. So how likely are pricing models likely to align with ethnic or cultural groups? Do your customers have any input on ethical issues? What kind of formal mechanism do you have for evaluating ethical concerns?
Okay, so what I should say before, again, this isn't personalized pricing as such. So the models, the kind of models I was talking about, they don't set the actual price. There's something where we think I'm squirming out of that, but yeah, they do set a discount, which I suppose is, linked to the price you're actually going to pay. Yeah, so in terms of what kind of controls, so a lot of this, I should say I'm not the legal expert. This is why I talk to people who are legal experts. But I think a lot of this comes under GDPR rules. So yeah, when this and with anything else that we do that is actually used on the site, so we have a formal process where we consult with like our data protection office to say, this is what we're intending to do. Does this both comply with the law, but also with how what AO is comfortable doing. And again, within those laws, there's a lot of requirements that all companies have to have a framework where you can submit a request to say, what data do you have on me? What are you doing with that data? Those kind of things. So yeah, we definitely have those kind of frameworks, and yeah, it's one thing as well that, in talking kind of generally, is a bit of a challenge sometimes. This, speaking kind of purely for myself, data science, one thing I try and do to kind of help with this is make sure the models are understandable, so that you can see exactly what is the model using, and then you can have a kind of more informed conversation about, are any of these factors likely to be biasing towards certain groups, that kind of thing. And so yeah, that's kind of roughly how we deal with these kind of issues.
Cool, that makes sense. So thank you for that. And the last one is to end on a light note from Safe. Based on the data, any general tips for Black Friday shopping?
I mean, apart from obviously shop with AO, because we have a lot of great deals. Yeah, I'm going to disappoint people. I probably would get in trouble for telling you strategies anyway, but I don't think we're going to do a lot of this specific stuff over Black Friday. It's more kind of blanket deals that we do there, but there will be some fantastic ones coming out if you want to look on our site.
Cool, thank you for that. Well, I don't think there are any more questions, so please all join me to thank Tim for the fantastic presentation and the very interesting Q&A. And thank you to all the attendees as well for joining us today. Please leave a message in the chat to say thank you, Tim. These sessions can be a bit dry otherwise, because we can't really see what's on, but we had more than 60 people for most of the session. So thank you all again for joining, and I hope to see you all at the next talk tomorrow. So thank you again, Tim, and
thank you very much.
Have a good rest of the day.
Thanks everyone for listening. Bye.
Cheers all, bye-bye.